So let me do one thing. So because it was created yesterday, so let me just log in with today's user. Okay, invalid salt, it is saying why. Hash password. Okay. All right. We'll be taking the same salt object. Set password, login password, bcrypt. Bcrypt check password is basically giving a response. That is not, it says invalid salt. Just give me a second. Why does it say invalid salt? Because we have created the same salt object. Let's do one thing. Let us clear this DB for now and then drop and then recreate. Hold on a second. Still holding the connection. Hold on a second. Okay, let me just start my application again. And let me access the browser /login. Now I don't have anything, so I'm going to register first. First name is name. Test at 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to submit. Right, and I'm going to test at 4, 5, 6. Mine is 1, 2, 3. This is 4, 5, 6. Okay, so already have an account. Let's go to login here. I'm trying to enter the valid password. Right, invalid salt value error y. Bcrypt. Ask bracket 1 moment. Why does it say invalid verb similar to described always and ready? The DB has a driver on DB fine. So or else okay, that's fine. So what technically what we should be doing is we should also generate a hash for the incoming password and then check whatever is stored in the DB. So let me do that explicitly. Why we don't want to depend on what is there already. So I'm going to define a simple function def check password, then stored password input password. I'm going to pass here, right? I have to convert the incoming password to the hash. Bcrypt for hash password. I'm going to pass the input password and salt. And I'm going to decode this to UTF-8. 8, so which will have a valid value. And I'm going to compare if hash equals to stored password, then return true, else return false. Is valid password. So I'm passing the stored password and the input password, and here input password also I'll take care of encrypting it. Input password is equal to input password dot. In order to encode hash, we have to encode to UTF-8, right? So while storing, we have decoded it and stored, right? While storing, we did decode the password hash, and that is the one which we have used to store in the DB, right? So I have to decode and only verify. Okay, so let me come back to my application. A simple function that I have written, basically, this also tries to encode, hash the password, the input password, and decode it and compare it with whatever is stored in the DB. If they both are equal, it will return true, else it will return password. So here, instead of this, what I'm going to pass is valid password, stored password, and password. So that's it. So here I'm not going to convert any of the stored password, encode and all, nothing. Here, that's it. As it is, I'm passing an incoming password, done. So that said, let me go back to the browser. Let me just continue to submit it, right? And here, invalid username or password, it is saying to this else block, right? So let me enter the valid one. Just at 1, 2, 3. Let me see what does it print. Invalid. Still it says invalid. I did enter the right name. So is valid password is called by passing the stored password as the first parameter, and input password encoded to the UTF-8 hash password, whatever is the hash, and I'm comparing it with the stored password. They both should be equal unless there is something wrong. Print what is the input password. Print what is the hash generated hash. Let me try again. Okay, so somehow this did not get encrypted. Why? The input password remained same. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that is correct. Hash. Then that should be stored password, not input password. Why? The stored password and the hash, right? So that is what I want to compare with. Let us compare both the hashes. So they are different. Both the hashes are different. So which means there is some problem the way I am trying to register and then use the same thing for authentication. One moment. So let us just go back and check the registration thing. Hash password, salt, and then decode to UTF-8, and that is stored in the DB. And here also I'm saying bcrypt hash password, input password, and I'm passing the same salt and decode it to UTF-8. And I'm trying to compare both the things that are stored in the DB and that I generated. They should technically be same. What is the problem? Invalid password, stored password, user of 1, and the password that user entered. Right. The time of registering. Are we printing anything in the registration flow? Yeah, I am printing. So let me just check the registration logs. There are certain errors. I don't know if these are valid. Let me. No, the one which we have stored and the one which we are hashing is not matching. Why? It should actually match. Let me create another user in the same flow. Let me sign up. Okay, now it says valid user. See, for this, it is valid. They both are same. I just registered. Okay.
Yes, sir.
For the previous user, I don't know, for some reason it failed. So let me just drop that data. Why is it taking so long? Drop it properly. Last time I don't remember. So let me do one thing. So the salt, I'm just going to keep it common. Okay, so right now I'm generating as and when I run the server, so which might change. So this can be any secret key. I'm just using this string randomly to store. So generally you can also do write whatever you want, but keep it constant. Do not change it. Okay, so let me go back to the browser DB. So let me try to create this guy. And now I'm just using, I'm not going with the default bcrypt generate salt. I'm going with my custom salt. So let me try logging in, register. The strings must be encoded before hashing. Hold on a second. The salt also has to be encoded. Okay, well, it's solved. One moment. We can have a custom salt. So len of salt should be not equal to 16 as given salt. Greater than 16 characters. How many characters do I have? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have more than 16, so that should have worked. Okay, let me just generate a common salt and then use it. One moment. Okay. Right, so I'm going to use this as a salt. Okay, so this is going to be same, and let me go back to my terminal and okay, was able to create the record properly. This creating test at 1, 2, 3 for this guy, and so for this Momin at 1, 2, 3 is what I'm setting. Okay, so everybody is proper. So I'm logging with Momin at 1, 2, 3. It should basically say valid user. So let me just go back and check. So okay, now I'm able to generate because I have kept my salt constant, and I'm able to generate the right hash every time. So valid user. Now same moment, if I just say test at 1, 2, 3 instead of moment at 1, 2, 3, it would it would say invalid user, right? Invalid username or password. Okay, so that's it. We are able to authenticate well. We are able to authenticate well. So is valid user is working. Right. So now if it is a valid user, what I'm going to say is redirect to home page. Redirect to slash home page, which we will write. Else, right. The render template, return render template. I'm going to say login.html. Going to take a certain thing, valid user is equal to false. Okay. Right, so I'm just passing certain parameters so that I want to display certain text in the login. So what here I'm going to just say is write about if valid user, just going to call it as invalid user. If invalid user and if invalid user, I want to add this text here. P tag I'm just saying invalid username or password. I'm just throwing some error message when user enters certain wrong password. Okay, so let's go back to the login page and let me reload this. Done. So Shrikant, and I'm going to enter some random wrong password. This should show me a red text. Okay, why is it not doing? Render template login.html invalid user is equal to true, not false. Okay, what does it say now?
Yeah, invalid username or
Password. So which means I have to enter again. Now this time, let's start 1, 2, 3. And I said redirect to the home page, and home page we still have not defined a home page URL itself, and hence it throws error. Now, right, so we are redirecting. We are able to redirect. So here also, even if the user enters an invalid, right? All right. So we have handled our, so we still there is a few more steps to do before we complete our login. So now what are we doing? So the moment I go to this login URL, if it is a get, I'm loading the login.html, right? If the user enters the password, there are two things. I'm checking if this, I'm taking the email ID and password, and I'm checking if this email ID is present in the DB. If it is present, then I'm taking the password and I'm comparing the password that is entered by the user with what is stored while registering. And return, why is it, why does it's indentation problem? Okay, so there was certain indentation mistake. Okay, if it is a valid user, we are saying, okay, well, you can go to home. If it is an invalid user, we are saying, right, just okay, go back to the login.html, and the invalid user parameter that I'm setting, the data value is true. And in the login.html, if at all, if there is an invalid user parameter sent at the time of rendering the HTML, I want to highlight this. I want to highlight this. So which is invalid username or password. Right. So let me go back here. Okay, let us write our home.html. Let us home.html. You just add home page. H1 tag I'll use. Welcome to home page. Welcome to home page. Right, let's go back here and write a URL for the home page. @app.route/home def home return render template home.html. So let us reload this now. We should be able to see the, okay, why, what happened? Is there any error? Yeah. This route, not route. See, if at all, if there is any error, right, your server automatically stops. So you have to restart. So let me, so it says welcome to home page. Now, so what should we do? So this home page should be accessed by the users who are actually authenticated, not by any user, but who are actually authenticated. So how do I control that? How do I control that? So your Flask login, right? Your Flask login library, which also comes with a particular guard, which says I can put on this, right? If at all, if you want to access this, I'm going to say login required. Login is required to access this page. So let's import this from the Flask login. I'm going to just say import login required. Login required. So what we are predominantly saying is if you want to access this page, login is must. Login is required. Okay, let us see if now I try to access this. What does it say? Unauthorized. Unauthorized. Right? So server could not verify your password to access the URL request. You either supplied a wrong credentials or your browser doesn't understand how to supply a credentials required. Okay, well, it is saying unauthorized. So which means if I want to access this, I should be authenticated. I should be authenticated. So if I go to login, right, it will not have any problem because login is open. Right? It just works. Yep. So
Yes,
in
sir.
order to access in order to access the protected URLs, which means only authenticated users can access those URLs, right? Only authenticated authenticated users only can access those URLs. Only can access those URLs. Are we clear? So
Yes,
for
sir.
that itself, right? For that itself, we have added a login required decorator. So which this login required decorator basically checks, okay, is this user valid, right? Is it has a valid authentication? Is it does it have a valid session, right? Only if it has a valid session, then that would actually allow, right? But I am entering the username and password correctly. I'm entering the username and password correctly. Then why is it not and from once after the validation is successful, it is saying it is redirecting to the home. But if I go to the home, it is saying you are not authenticated. You are not authenticated. So which means though you are authenticated, your server is not recognizing that you are actually authenticated. So what is the second step that I told at the time of authentication? You have to create a session, right? You have to create a session and you have to put that session ID into the browser so that browser sends that cookie, stores that session ID in the cookie and sends it on a every request. Yes, I did say that, right?
Yes, sir.
Here, that is what we said. In the every request, browser should send that session ID, only then your browser can understand, okay, well, this is a valid session ID and this is the authenticated user, and I have to allow this user. Browser has to, right? Browser has to understand that much, right? Okay. Now, so did we set a cookie in the browser? Let us see. I have to right click and say inspect, and I'll have these many values, right? I can just go to this thing called application and I can check. Okay, so this will basically say like, is there any session storage, local storage? Are there any cookies? It will basically tell on this browser, do we have any cookies? There is right now, there is nothing. It's all empty, right? We'll try to set the cookies. So if I have to set the cookie, right, I have to, after my valid authentication, I have to use a Flask logins function. There is a Flask login function which basically says login, The moment I do that login user function, your Flask session will take care of adding that cookie into the browser. So before redirecting, right, what I'm going to say is, so let me first import that login user and logout user functions. In the Flask login itself has login user, also has something called logout user, right? Flask login comes up with, right, login user, logout user functions as well. So before redirecting, what I will do here, right, I'm just going to say login user, right, and I'm passing that whatever is the user object to this, right? Done. After that, I'm redirecting. Okay, the moment I say this, okay, login user, well, let me just go back to login, right, and enter the proper valid username password and just say login. Right, tuple object has no attribute is active. Hold on a second. And does it require is active? Is authenticated, is active. Think, hold on a second, just a moment. Tuple object has no attribute, is active. Not necessary that it should contain a is active. Okay, let me do one thing. Not necessary, it should contain a is active. One moment. So, okay, another change that we have to do is when this function returns, it has to return a user object, not the result set. So let me just return set the email ID, password and all. Email, password, and I'm just going to set is active also, and self dot email is equal to email, self dot password is equal to password, self dot is active is equal to true. Right, so I'm going to default take that as a true. Okay, ID, email, password, I'm setting that, and instead of returning the result set, I'm going to return a user object by passing the respective values. So which is the first itself is the ID, the 0th. So 0 is the ID, right? RS of 1 is the email. RS of 2 is the password. 0, 1. So actually 2, 1 is the name, 2 is the email, and 3 is the password. Right? Instead of while logging in, I'm going to return it this way. So get of user email, and here instead of taking like this, user dot password, this should return the password, the stored password, and then it can be used. Okay, let me go back to the browser, login. This should set the attribute. So password verify done. We just say login user, remember data, done. Okay. So we generally need a user mixin. So we did have the user mixin. And let me check my user mixin class again. User mixin. The is active also. I'll just try to eliminate. So all I want is this information. I am setting that information, done returning that user. So this load user returns that. And at the moment I say login, passing that user object. That's it, right? So we should not be doing anything more. This is not because there's no secret key was set. Okay, I have to set a secret key for the app. Where is my Flask app? App dot. So I have to basically set certain secret key. Just config. I'll explain this just a moment. You can basically provide any secret key. So I am just going to set to generate the session. You need this. So this will be specific to your server. So nobody can actually use this. Nobody should know the secret key so that they can decrypt the session ID. So nobody should know this session. The secret key should be always stay kept hidden when you build your application. So I think that's it, and I'm going to pass it to the login manager. So login manager knows this as a key. Okay, all right. Save it. So let's go back to the browser, reload the login page, and let me enter the password again. Okay, so now login user, but /home still says unauthorized, but let us check. So, but yeah, so does it have a session this time? It has generated certain cookie, right?
Yes, sir.
right? So this login user has actually generated a session and added a particular cookie, and this is for this particular website. This cookie is for this particular website. So now every time every time there is a request, browser will ensure that it will send this cookie. Browser will ensure that it will send this cookie. If you check in the headers, there will be a cookie and there will be something called session, and browser will ensure that it will always, on every request, it will send the session, this cookie, so that the server can understand, Okay, now that we have added our session, so it still says unauthorized. Let's try to debug. Right, one moment. So after that, login user, and we said return redirect home. And from here it went to home, and we are saying login required. But login required function is returning a 403. That is because it did not identify that. But why? So it is a 401 unauthorized. Written login user. So now login user is working. It is also creating a session. Okay. And after that, what is the thing? So it should actually allow us to access the. So let me just stop. Let me just try to reload. I do have the cookie. So did I pass the cookie? Okay, the cookie is lost because I stopped my server and restarted. So let me just log in again. So if I don't access this URL, right? If I don't access this URL, so I should basically by default go back to the login page. Right, that is how it works, right? It doesn't say unauthorized. If you are not allowed to access a particular page, right, it should basically take you back to the login page.
Yes, sir.
Right, so how to add that? So your login required, right? So this also takes one more parameter, right? So you can pass a particular parameter called login, and you can say like, where is your login URL, and it would actually ensure to redirect that user to the login page, redirect that user to the login page. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Back here, and wherever I have added login required is equal to /login. Now let me try accessing home. Did the server stop? Yeah. It's a login URL, is it? One moment. Let me just, it's not the login URL. One moment. Okay, before proceeding further, right? So what I'll do, let me just reiterate what we have done today, and we'll continue tomorrow on the same thing. Okay. All right. So first thing is that in order to manage our authentication and login session management, we installed a package called Flask Login, which has several options for us to manage our sessions and the login and the logout. Okay. Now, first thing in that is that whenever you create a Flask application, if you want to use the Flask login, we have to instantiate the login manager. So for that, we have to import the login manager, and we have to instantiate the login manager class. Okay, and if you want the authentication, if you want that in authentication, so you need to provide the secret key. So which is this, right? This can be any random secret key that you don't want anybody to know about it, right? So when you build a server, you don't want people to know, like, how you have created your session ID. So this secret key should be kept secret. I mean, that should not be public, right? and this is what you have to set, and you instantiate the login manager and you pass the Flask instance to that. Right, done. And after that, you will be using this login manager to do a user loader function. So this load user function, basically you pass the email ID and then pass the user object to it and get pass the email and get the user. Okay, then we have, as we discussed yesterday, we have done a register and register user post. And today, additional to that, we just use the how to validate the password that is already stored in the DB. Right, we saw that and we tried using certain login Flask login methods. Right, first we got the user. We got the stored password. We validated the password by using the isValid password function, which we have written here, right? By converting the input password, also hashing, then converting both of them to the same encode. And we decoded it and then compared it. And if they are same, which means it is a valid password. If not, it is a invalid password, based on which we sent the responses back to the browser to display the appropriate response. And once it is the login, we used the login user function. We used a login user function again, which is from the Flask login, and this would actually add a session cookie into the browser. Right? So that the browser can send that session cookie on every request to the server, so that the server can understand, okay, this is a valid user, already authenticated user, and hence I have to allow this user. So today we were not able to successfully complete this login user authentication step. We'll continue from where we left today. So, but before that, I am going to commit these changes to the server, to the Git. All right, so you have all these files in the Git, so you can basically check from there. Okay.